Uh, Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a warm welcome to ACHILINKS Travel Consults, our periodic Facebook live session where we talk about IELTS and PTE, some emerging issues, as well as some of the important things that we need in order to pass the test, and then some other vital things that we are expected to draw much of our attention onto. If you want to register the test, if you want to know what entails in the test, if you want to know how to prepare for the test, this is what we normally do during this particular session. Now today we have some most important things, but I'm going to touch more on what we are supposed to do in order for us to be able to partake and then prepare confidently for both the speaking and then one of the aspects of the test, which is writing. And then we also talk about some of the various hesitations. Some people say it is hiccups, others say loss of words and ideas. So we're going to look at those hesitations that normally occur when we are mostly taking the speaking test. One other thing that we also discussed today is the criteria for scoring, that is overall test scoring criteria. And then we also talk about some of the exams. A lot of questions that we have received that people want to know some of the tests that you write, some of the foreign exams that you are supposed to partake or you're supposed to write in order for you to have scholarships and study abroad, as well as find a way of migrating to the country of your choice. So these are some of the most important things that we are going to discuss today. But I'll first start with the most important one. I would say all of them are important anyway, just that we are looking at some of us who have already registered for the test. Therefore, if we are preparing towards taking the test, there are certain things that we have to know, certain things especially in relation to speaking and writing. Now, one thing that we have to make sure we avoid is repetition of words as well as repetition of sentences. Now, that is how come vocabulary is very important when it comes to the IELTS test. So you have to first develop your vocabulary, build upon it, and then you make sure you understand the ideas that you are going to express in texts or in speech. So now, there are several things that you have to look at, especially in the speaking and writing. As I said, repetition of words, repetition of sentences are very, very dangerous. Therefore, it can lead to you getting a very low band score in that particular aspect, especially with speaking and writing. Now you realize that speaking and writing are these two tests that will highly test your own ability to write certain things or your own ability to express yourself in speech. So you are now going to organize your ideas. But then when it comes to listening, the answers are there for you to choose from. The passage is there for you to select from when it comes to reading. But then with speaking and writing, you are going to use your own words to organize your ideas. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the sentence types. There are various types of sentences that in one way or another you have to adopt when you are taking the speaking and then the writing test. Especially, you cannot use one type of sentence which will run through all your answers when it comes to writing and when it comes to speaking. So in speaking, you have to mix up the various sentences. Now we talk about several sentence types. There are some types of sentences that will only give you, or that will only express an idea in your answer. So definitely when you are answering a question when it comes to IELTS speaking, you have to make sure the ideas that you express are more than one. Minimum, you have to express 2 or more ideas in the answers that you give. That is how come you don't only use one type of sentences. Now, these are some of the types of sentences that you can adopt or you can employ when it comes to the speaking. The first type of sentence I would like to talk about is simple sentence. When we were in junior high, we talked about types of sentences and the various areas that we can put together when we are writing in English language. Now we have to also adopt the same method, the same process and the same ideas when we want to take the speaking as well as the writing. Now, as I said, because in the speaking test you are expected to express your own ideas in that same format, the same way applies to the writing. That is how come you must pay much attention to certain things. So we have simple sentences, we have compound sentences, we have complex sentences, we have passive sentences, we have question sentences, we have conditional sentences. All these are types of sentences that you can put together to provide or give answers to the questions that you are being asked in your write-up, especially with the writing test. Now, the reason why you have to kind of mix up all these types of sentences is that, the moment it falls in line with one type of sentence, your write-up becomes very simple and then very, like a beginner. But then you have to express, or you have to show up that you know how to use the language in various ways. So it also limits you. It shows that you are limited in the language usage. Therefore, you have to mix up. So for instance, you can start with simple sentence, then you introduce some form of compound sentences as well as complex sentences. Now, when it comes to compound and complex sentences, these two types of sentences, they provide more than one idea. That is, they create a buttress idea to the major idea. That is how come when you are saying Kofi is going to school, that is one idea, which is a simple sentence which contains a simple tense, simple words. But when it comes to a compound sentence or a complex sentence, there are several words that you can also apply, or you can also put together. And then, as I said, compound sentences will provide the listener with two or more ideas, or variety of ideas when it comes to expression. But in the simple sentence, it only gives you one idea. That is why in speaking, you don't only answer your questions with simple sentences. You don't only answer your questions with maybe only passive sentence. In as much as we know all these types of sentences, we should know when to use a simple sentence, when to use a complex sentence and a compound sentence in that regard. Because it is not always the case that a simple sentence will be used throughout. That is, as I said, that is a dangerous thing to do. And it's not always the case that you can use compound sentences. Some questions demand simple answers. Therefore, you have to also add simple. You have to use simple sentences. Some questions will demand you to go a step further than the basic idea or the basic answer. In that case, you have to also use compound or complex sentences. Sometimes you also have to talk about passive sentences, and then you have to talk about question sentences. The question sentences are the ones that will ask or seek a response from the reader. Sometimes it is kind of an abstract. It is kind of intangible. But when it comes to the usage of sentences, we don't always have to draw our attention onto just one, but we have to create variety of sentences in our speech and then in our write-up. Now, one other thing that I want us to go on to are the two types of hesitation. Now, this is limited to speaking. When it comes to speaking tests, there are two ways that you can do your speaking test. You can do the speaking test in a very smooth way, or you can do it by having several hiccups in your speech. Now, in the speaking test, we have, as I said, two types of hesitation. Now, hesitation is where you lack the ability to draw out or to put together several information to quickly answer a question. Now, the moment you attempt the speaking test and then you have several hesitations, it means that it will affect your fluency, and then it will also affect your vocabulary, as well as it might even affect your grammar, because the fact that you struggle to get information, you struggle to get the words, means you lack vocabulary. You struggle to put certain sentences together. It means you don't have enough command, or you don't have a strong command over the English language, and that becomes that will go against you when it comes to the criteria or the category of scoring when your speech or your speaking test is being assessed. Now, there are two types of hesitation. The first one is content-related hesitation, and then we have the language-related hesitation. Now, I'll talk about each of them, and then you know how and then when or where you fall short, or the ones that you need to improve upon. Now, let's start with the content-related. When we say content-related hesitation, now hesitation, as I said, your ability to express yourself smoothly and quickly and fluently, that becomes hesitation. So, for instance, if you start talking, or you start explaining or describing something, and then you try so hard to get information or to get facts, to get ideas, to organize your description, then you will be going through the content related hesitation. Now, content related has to do with your inability to have enough information to describe something. So if you are talking about technology, or if you are being asked, especially in part 2 where you have 2 minutes to talk about a particular topic, and then you have 1 minute to prepare. Now, when you're given the 2 minutes, if you start describing the topic or the item of question, and then you find it very difficult to come up with information, you come up with several, it becomes very unfortunate because it affects your fluency and it affects your vocabulary. Therefore, content-related hesitation affects most of us, especially when you are tensed, when you don't have enough vocabulary, and then when you don't have a very strong grammatical background. So it means that you struggle to get facts, you struggle to get information. So if you are describing a laptop, it becomes difficult for you to find words and facts to describe the laptop. If you are describing transportation, you find it very difficult to get ideas. Now, we also have to understand that the speaking test is mostly not familiar with all of us. You wouldn't have a head-on or you wouldn't have a particular idea on what the topic of discussion is going to be like. Therefore, you have to make sure that you don't go there having certain topics in mind and waiting for questions on that particular topic, but you go there prepared, and then you build yourself around the 4 areas of scoring, of which we will talk about in the next item of discussion. So the content, if we are describing the activities in a park, if you lack vocabularies that has a relationship with park, then it becomes you will not get facts to talk about it. You not get information to describe it. If you have, if you're talking about maybe education, and then there's certain ideas, certain information that will provide a smooth description on that particular topic or subject, then if you lack that, then it means that you are now going through, or you are suffering from content related. Excuse my word, suffering. That's just a joke, by the way. So content related is when you don't have enough information or facts to talk about the topic that is being asked. Now, the next hesitation is language related. Now, if content related hesitation has to do with facts, then language related will have to do with words, because IELTSPTE is highly related to words, especially vocabulary. So that is why, or that's how come in the various areas of scoring, vocabulary is very important, and then grammar is also very important. So if you are having a language related hesitation, now language related hesitation has to do with your inability to get enough words Now, in the first one, which is the content, it has to do with facts and information. But this particular type of hesitation, which is language related, it has to do with your inability to get words. So content has to do with facts and information, and then language has to do with words. So if you struggle, if you find it hard and difficult to put words together to describe something, then that is language related. Now, this has to do with your lack of enough vocabulary when you are describing something. For instance, if you are supposed to talk about an activity, an event, but then whilst you are describing it, you find it hard to get your ideas on, or to get certain words to describe it, then it means your hesitation is language related. Now, don't forget that speaking tests, one of the areas of scoring is vocabulary and then fluency, as well as pronunciation. Now, when it comes to fluency is very important, because that is the one that will provide the listener the smooth ideas or the main ideas in the sentence or statement that you are giving. So if your description or if your statements are not fluent enough, you get to have a boring kind of conversation, and then you get to lack vocabulary, and you make the conversation you seem to look like you don't know how to use, or you don't have mastery of the language. So language related or content related, they all have to do with hesitation. So for instance, somebody can start describing something, and then we'll start by saying there are two diagnoses. Then it means the person is suffering from the language, because he finds it difficult to get a word that will fit into his sentence of description. But then if somebody is talking about maybe a dentist, the person is describing a dentist, and then the person starts like saying, okay, so I visited the dentist, and then the dentist did so it means he or she does not know the exact information or the term that is used to describe what the dentist did. So it means that you lack content. So now you're talking about technology, and then maybe you are describing a process where information is data is changed into information. Then you start by saying, so the first stage is when data is entered. So when it happens like that, then it means you lack the information, or you are hesitant in your content. You don't have enough facts and enough terms to describe a process, to describe an event, to describe a particular state of matter, or a particular state of an item, or a particular state of something. But then if you are very fluent, you are able to have a high command of the language and words. You're able to pull your facts together and express it in a way that everybody will have a very smooth understanding of what you are expressing. Then it means these two hesitations are far away from you. But then if you suffer from them, then definitely that fluency, which is an area of scoring, may go against you and might not give you the kind of bound score that you expect. Now, one other thing about the speaking test is that, when you are preparing for the IELTS and PTE, you don't start by, going straight on to practice test and all of that. Practice test can come later. You wait for some time. You build yourself upon the areas that you are going to be scored. I keep saying this because it is very important in that area. Now, when it comes to preparing yourself for the test, now, in speaking, you're supposed to be marked on fluency, pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, cohesion. These things that you're going to be marked on, you have to make sure you develop yourself around these areas of scoring. But sometimes we often make this mistake, and we quickly jump onto the internet and we start watching videos, and we start watching interviews, and we start practicing some past questions and all of that. These ones will not help you to pass the test, but then they will rather confuse you the more, because you may not find the major clues as to what or which one will help you to pass the test. But then when you're able to study the areas, understand the test itself, come to ACHILINKS, let us discuss with you things, certain areas that you're supposed to pass. Because it is very important that you don't only look at one direction, but you look at all the areas that you are supposed to be scored. It's very, very important and very necessary. Now, one other thing is that I want us to talk about is the overall test assessment criteria. Every test, every aspect of the IELTS test and then PTE test, they have a particular area that they use to score you. Now, if they are going to base their marks on certain things, that is where you have to build upon them. So I'm going to run you through all these areas of scoring. Now, in speaking, I've already said that they always look at your fluency, your grammar, they look at your vocabulary, and then they look at your pronunciation. That is in speaking. Now, when it comes to listening, now listening also has to do with your ability to understand, because in the aspect that the listening test is looking at is your ability to listen, understand, and communicate. That is what the listening test is also looking at. Therefore, whenever you are practicing the listening test, or whenever you are going to take the listening test, just have that in mind, that the listening test is not just going to look at things that you have written down, but it's also going to look at your ability to convert the information that you have consumed through your hearing to answering of the questions. Because if you're able to consume the information and understand them, that is where you'll be able to express it by answering the various questions. So it's important that you also develop your listening skills. It's important that you develop your speed in answering questions. It's important that you always try to find the most important idea, the major idea in what you are describing or what you are hearing from the recording, so that it will give you much more information to answer the question. One other thing about the next one, which is the reading test. Reading has to do with a passage. That's our traditional comprehension form of questioning, where you will have a passage and then you'll be given some questions to answer. Now, reading has to do with your ability to look at the major ideas in each paragraph, preferably each sentence anyway, because you are expected to consume all the knowledge that is found inside the passage that is given to you. And don't forget, you are reading 3 different passages, and then each passage, as the test progresses, the difficulty in each passage will also will also increase. So definitely, when you are reading or when you are taking the reading test, you have to make sure that you work with speed. You also have to be able to consume all the information on the passage that you are reading, which is in the passage, whether in various paragraphs or whether in various sentences or whether in the whole passage as well, because that is what will help you to answer the questions. Now, I normally say that every answer on the reading test is in the passage. Therefore, there is no way you are going to pick any answer from. You always have to pick the information from the passage. Every information you want to get from the passage, you have to make sure you identify them. And it's not the fact that you are only going to identify the information, but you have to also understand the information. Then you can convert it to answering the question, which is very, very important. Now, when it comes to writing has to do with structure. You have to know how you organize your information into various paragraphs. When you are writing a composition essay, just as we know in our traditional composition test, where you're supposed to write a letter, you're supposed to write an argumentative essay, or you're going to write a summary or report or something. it has to do with structure, because in as much as you are looking at how much your information is structured or organized, they are also looking at how you will also organize your information and your structure based on your write-up. Therefore, whatever that you are writing, you have to make sure the whole write-up is organized mostly in 4 major paragraphs. And then in as much as you organize it in 4 paragraphs, make sure your spellings are also on point, because in the writing test, your spelling replaces your pronunciation, because whatever you write, it definitely might change the idea in the sentence. So if you are describing a graph and then you don't have certain vocabularies to also describe the graph, you lack that kind of mark in order for you to get the band score that you need. Now, one other thing about writing is that, you have to make sure you create a parallel idea. That is by linking the information from the previous paragraph to the subsequent paragraphs. So if your introduction, there are several conclusive ideas in the introduction. When you come to the second paragraph, which is the overview, you also have to provide some form of information which is linking to the introduction. Now, that is how come you have to get several words that will connect the information, and then that will connect the various paragraphs. That is for writing. The same applies to writing task 1 and then writing task 2. So in general, you have to make sure you organize your information in 4 main paragraphs. Okay, so the last aspect of what we are discussing today is the international exams for scholarships and study abroad. Now, for the past weeks, we've been talking about study abroad, and we're talking about opportunities that people can have when it comes to traveling outside the country and trying to find schools that will help us develop our career as well as our academics. So we have several requirements. Sometimes I had a question earlier today. The person was asking which exam to write in order to get a scholarship. Now, one thing about scholarships is that it is highly dependent on the requirement of the awarding institution, as well as your credentials that you are presenting for the scholarship. And also, it is also dependent on, now for instance, if the requirement is that you are supposed to write a GRE exam, and then there's a specific score that you have to get, especially when you are applying for a school or a course. Definitely you have to meet up that particular course. And then in GRE, if you want to get a scholarship, you have to make sure you get a very high score in that, because notwithstanding the fact that your credentials may not be good, if you're able to get a higher score in GRE, you are assured of a scholarship, a higher percentage of a scholarship. Now, you cannot just select any other test or international exam and write and use it to apply for a school. But first, before you even think of writing an exams, you have to draw your attention to the requirements of that particular school that you are applying to, or the particular job that you want to apply to. So for our nurses, our health workers, it is defined that those of us in UK, if you want to, those of us in the health sector who want to apply for a job in UK, if you want to apply to register with NMC UK, definitely there are certain exams that you are supposed to write. In this case, you cannot define, or you cannot select a GRE exams and write it, because it is not defined in the requirements. But when you are writing an exam, or when you are applying or registering with NMC UK, you are expected to write IELTS and CBT. That is the requirement for NMC UK. One other thing is that if you're also applying for a school in Canada, Canada or US, depending on the school and the course that you are going to do, that will determine the type of exam that you will write. So some people have heard that we have several types of exams. We have GRE, we have GMAT, we have all the other exams. So if you want to take part in that test, definitely look at the purpose for which you are taking the test. Look at the reason because that will help you to know, or that will help you to identify which type of test to write. Because if I want to apply for a school in UK, but then the requirement is seeking that I submit an English proficiency score, in that case, if I cannot go and write a GRE or a GMAT exam. Moreover, if I want to apply for a graduate course in US, I wouldn't be expected to write SAT. I would rather be expected to write a GRE or a GMAT. And then, so definitely when you are trying to apply for something, whether a job, whether it's you migrating to another country, or whether it is study abroad, first take time to go through all the requirements and then identify which test will help you to pass which test is required of you before you start thinking of writing it. That is how come when you come here in ACHILINKS, we sit you down, we discuss your purpose of the purpose for which you want to travel, and then certain requirements that are needed based on the purpose that you explain to us. Then we will map it with the type of exam, we will map it with the type of documents and other required items that you need in order to have a successful visa to wherever you are trying to go to. So you don't only read certain adverts, don't only read some information on the internet and say that GRE can give you a scholarship. Now, if you want to know that GRE can give you a scholarship, go further and know that where does that particular exam can provide me with the scholarship, or which country can I get this particular scholarship from. That is how you have to always look at it. It's not only the fact that it is there, so you also have to take part. Or in some cases, somebody will say, a lot of my colleagues are writing this exam, a lot of my colleagues are taking part in PTE, therefore I also want to write it. What are you going to use it for? That is the most important thing. What are the requirements that are needed for you to successfully get your visa to where you want to travel to? It is important that always consider the various requirements, always consider the various purpose or reasons why you want to travel before you look at all the exams or the type of test that you want to write. I would like to remind you again that here in ACHILINKS we have tutors who are so much experienced in IELTSPTE, CBT, GRE, GMAT, and Tutor. So if you would want to take part in any of these tests, we organize tutorials on these one. Now the good thing about this is that our timetable is very flexible based on your preference. So we know that some of us are workers, and therefore if we want to have a tutorial on the side, it may affect our work schedule. Therefore, we sit you down, we have a chat with you, we look at your schedule, we look at ours, then we come to an agreement that will suit you. So our timetables are very flexible, and therefore we don't have a holistic class. We only treat every person individually. That is how come you are able to get the understanding of the type of tutorial, the type of test that you are going to write. Now the good thing is that most of our students, actually no student has ever failed any of our tests. That is a good thing for us. It's a plus. Since we started this journey, none of our students has ever failed in any of their exams. Or whoever comes around passes or gets the band score that they need, and that is something that we should be proud of. We are very much proud of that, and then we thank God for the kind of ideas and the kind of clients and the kind of students that we have, because they are all committed to what we also give. That is what we will encourage all of us who have not yet joined in to join us. Now, so today we want to have this discussion, and then we want to end with this particular advice, that it doesn't matter the reason for your travel. It doesn't matter the purpose for which you want to go somewhere else, but you always have to draw much attention to requirements. You always have to make sure understanding the requirements and getting to know what you are expected to present is very important. Now, one other thing is that if you are taking IELTS, PTE, GRE, whatever test that you want to write, the first thing is that you have to understand the areas, the criteria, the category of scoring and marking, so that you develop yourself in that aspect. Don't always jump onto practice tests, because they will not help you. They will not help you. But you try as much as possible to understand how the test is marked, understand how the test is scored. Then you develop yourself in that angle before you start practicing past questions. Because past questions will only give you the questions and the areas that the questions came from, but they will not tell you exactly what you are going to be marked on. That is how come you always have to pay attention to these things. Now, I would like us to just end this session by saying that all the time you can send us messages, you can send us email, you can send us WhatsApp messages, you can even call. Our doors are highly open for anyone who want to have inquiries on anything. You can contact us and reach us through our social media platforms, and then you can also find out more about our services on our website. So until then, I would advise that you always try to read the right way, write the right way, speak the right way, and then listen the right way to help you develop your skills in order to take any test that you want to have. God bless you, and then thank you for your time for today. I'll see you next time. In 2 weeks, Tuesday, same time, same platform. We'll have another discussion on very vital points. So one last thing I want to touch on is those of us who would want to work in UK, especially with nurses, you can walk to our offices or you can call us, contact us. We'll give you a brief discussion on all the information that you need. Those of us who want to study in Canada, just try as much as possible to contact us. Don't only read, you can also contact us, and then we'll have a discussion with you, explain certain things to you for you to understand. If you want to also learn in Finland, we have a package for that. Those of us who want to learn how to cook, we have a package for that. Those of us who want to learn how to manage business, we have a package for that. Those of us who want to learn nurse, we definitely have a package for that. So anytime, anything at all that you want to partake in, definitely we will have your package for you. So just walk in our various offices in Accra and Kumasi. Just have a discussion with any of our agents. We will provide you, make sure you are highly assisted. And then I'm telling you, when you walk in here, by the time you leave here, then you will be leaving to the airport to take your flight. So definitely, it means that our services will satisfy you to the extent that your purpose for coming to this particular office will be achieved. Have a wonderful day, and then anytime you want to register for any of the tests, do contact us and we will assist you. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you next time.